Welcome back to Anatomy, everybody. While you were just finishing watching that last video, I was starting to already remove everything, so it made it easier for showing you and not wasting too much time. But starting with, you can see this muscle right here. Hopefully you can see that. That is your diaphragm muscle, separating your thoracic from your abdominal pelvic cavity. And then when we open it up, I cut through the ribs and the sternum to expose the whole thoracic cavity. And right there under all that fat is the heart. Here is the cat's right lungs, all the lobes. Here is the cat's left lobes of its lung. And then leading right up here, here is the trachea, leading all the way to its windpipe, its vocal cord. So I cut it off already. And so I'm actually gonna, well, you can see, I hope, yes, that there are two tubes right there. This is how close your esophagus and your trachea are. Your trachea is really close in front of your neck. When you touch your neck and it goes like that, you're hitting on your trachea with your voice box because your larynx and your vocal cords are in there. That's this front opening here. The back opening here, that's the tube, that's the esophagus. So when you swallow food, it's going down there. So if you've ever coughed and sputtered because you swallowed something and you say, oh, it went down the wrong tube, it's because a little flap right here called the epiglottis, which I accidentally cut off, normally covers this trachea so that it only allows food to go down the back tube there, the esophagus. And if it doesn't get to close fast enough, then it makes you cough and sputter. And so what I did is I already cut almost all of this out for you. So I'm actually gonna pick the whole thing up for you. I wanted to do the last couple snips for those who were interested in seeing how this whole thing is actually in there. A lot of connective tissue holding everything in our bodies. A lot of arteries and veins. And there's the sidewall muscle. All right. So this is collectively called a pluck because I can literally pull it and pluck it all the way out. So again, if you didn't have a very clear view of these, this first opening right there is the trachea, which is going to lead to the lungs. The back one there is the esophagus. The esophagus is the soft squishy tube. The trachea is really hard because it has all this cartilage right there in all of the rings. So it looks like lines going through it. But that's good because that's helping to keep your airway open. That then leads down to your lungs. And then this is your heart, which is encased in a big sac that's protecting you. That's that pericardial sac. So let me try to remove that for us so we can see that better. Very thin, very slippery. Remember, that is serving as helping for friction for the heart to beat. There we go. Peel it off, real thin layer right there. So that would have been the visceral pericardium, part of the peritoneal sac. Sorry, pericardial sac, use the right term, Westerhof. All right, so remember our heart and our lungs are really close because the right side of the heart is gonna send blood to the lungs to get oxygenated as we breathe in. And then the left side of the heart is gonna receive that oxygenated blood and it's gonna send it out to the whole entire rest of the body. So let me separate the heart from the lungs. And I will also repost the deer heart video for you to watch because the cat heart parts obviously are going to be way smaller than the deer heart parts inside. But there is the cat heart. So if I hold it, I don't know what way is best for you. This is the right auricle. So the right atrium would be right under this, right ventricle. Here is the left auricle. The left atrium is under that. The left ventricle goes all the way down here to the apex. And then you can see up here, we've got the vena cava coming out the back. For us, that would be our descending vena cava. For them, it's the dorsal vena cava. And then superior, or what is theirs? Cranial. Yeah, cranial vena cava and caudal, vena cava for them. Ours are superior and inferior. And then the red one right there would be the aorta. So that's the largest artery in the heart. That's the largest vein in the heart. And if I try to go back to the lungs here, where the trachea first tries to branch into the lungs, right there in the very first division there, that would be a left and right primary bronchi. And then as it gets smaller and smaller, they would go into bronchioles. But can you see that hole right there where if I squeeze, liquid's coming out? That's one of those bronchi openings. And so they have multiple lobes to their lungs just like we do. We have 3 and 2. They have like 7 and 5. They have lots of lobes. And lung material is not completely a hole or a bag. It's very spongy-like in consistency. But again, you can see lots of microscopic holes and larger holes going in. So the primary bronchi turn into secondary bronchi, turn into tertiary bronchi, eventually into bronchioles, and they lead to those little alveolar sacs, which is where all our oxygen and carbon dioxide is being exchanged. And if I try to cut this heart for you, like I did for you with the deer heart, you might get lucky enough to see some of the parts inside. All right, so this was the front of it. And so when I open this half like this is the right side. So the right side receives deoxygenated blood, and you can see there that there's blue in there. That's because there's deoxygenated blood coming from the veins. The left side of the heart is pink because it has just received oxygenated blood from arteries. Okay, and so it has received oxygen, it's nice and pink, it's pinked up, and so that's going to be sending it to the entire rest of the body. And let's see if I'm lucky enough to be able to peel some of this latex out of here or not. It's very, very stretchy like rubber bands. Ooh, kinda. You can kind of get a better look at the inside of, let's see again, that is the left side of the heart, so that is the left ventricle, which again is usually opposite because when we're looking at a diagram in the book, they're on the other sides. I want to see if you can see the difference in the wall thickness, which you should be able to. There's the septum down the middle. Excuse me. This smell makes me sneeze. So here is the left ventricle, right ventricle, left ventricle. The left side has to go to the entire rest of the body, out the aorta. That's why it's pink there. All oxygenated blood. Look how thick that wall is on the left side. It's got to go a long, long distance to the whole rest of the body. This wall almost ripped apart when I pulled that latex out because it only has to go to the lungs. So a very, very short distance. And so the atria are up here. This one is still filled in with stuff right there. So the valve would have been right there. This one here, I keep forgetting because it's opposite for me now. Left atria is up here, separated by a valve. Hard to tell, because again, I ripped a lot of that stuff out. But definitely a difference in thickness of the wall of the muscle, because it has to go a whole heck of a lot farther for the cat and for us. All right, that concludes the respiratory and cardiovascular. Last but not least, urinary.